Hey, welcome back, everybody. Time for our community podcast as we talk to the people in the community. Our community is your community, powered by the Orange County Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. And with the guy who knows all the old radio stories here today, Ruben Franco.
I know all those. Now I think you're making things up.
I think I'm making things up. No,
Right.
your guest was talking about radio, and we're talking about the old days. He worked for Howard Stern at one point in time. I hope he's going to bring that
We'll
up.
have to talk about that. Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks for having us on. Jim, thanks for joining us. This is Our Community is Your Community podcast, the Orange County Hispanic Chamber. We'd like to bring on our guests, our sponsors, our supporters, our members, our community to come on and talk about what's going on in their world and all that kind of stuff. But let me introduce our guests. We have Jim Coronado. I've known Jim a few years. He's the Director of Economic Equity Advisory Group and Latino segment for BMO U.S. We're going to have him explain exactly what that means. But we love to start our podcast off by just getting to know Jim a little bit better for our audience. Jim, tell us a little bit about yourself personally, your family, that kind of thing.
And as long as he's been in radio, we got to get him to get closer to the mic here.
All right.
He's way back from the mic here.
Okay.
Yeah, I never said I was front of
You're
the
with the talent. You're
Exactly.
at the front of the house. Okay, all right.
No, I appreciate that. Ruben and Paul, thank you both for having me. I'm excited to be here. A little bit about myself. I've lived in California now since 1989, so I'm a transplant.
Okay.
But I think I qualify.
From where?
Originally from outside of Philadelphia.
Okay.
So by route of born in El Paso, Texas, grew up in Juarez, Mexico.
Okay.
And at the age of 6, immigrated with my mom and sister to a rural town outside of Philadelphia called Leesport, Pennsylvania.
Okay.
So that had a lot of influence, obviously, that journey.
My wife's from Levittown, Pennsylvania.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
okay, absolutely.
Yeah.
Best times of my life as a kid, I really got to experience that and, again, shaped me and who I am today and really at the heart of what I like to do and how I go about in life, but also certainly in my business and my mission.
Sure.
And so now living here for so long, been married now for actually celebrating our 21st anniversary tomorrow.
Congratulations.
With my lovely wife. So looking forward to that, taking the day off. So
Good. You deserve it. She deserves it.
Yeah, she absolutely deserves it. But again, that journey really for me was just the beginning of it, right?
Yeah.
And having an opportunity to grow up in communities like that, especially in the mid 70s, late 70s,
Yeah.
and seeing what financial institutions meant for upward mobility and they at the time they really weren't for us, right? We had to figure out how to navigate that, so that was very impactful for me. Connecting it back to how I made it out to Los Angeles. I came out here, I remember, I think I was a junior, came to my cousin's wedding. And this is another chord that it struck for me. I just saw the culture here. The Latino culture was so vibrant. And again, the music, the food, the people, the shared traditions, everything else that was there that just resonated for me. And that really was pivotal for me because I made the decision to come out to the West Coast to go to college.
Yeah.
I worked hard during high school and I had opportunities to go to different universities, full rides. And I decided to go to USC. We were talking a little about that, in University of Southern California, and I know I got some folks in this room.
And what'd you major in?
It was business administration with focus on marketing and sales. So
Okay.
I actually got to practice.
There you go.
right,
Okay.
what I studied,
Sure.
and then from there it just really that became the foundation between the education and the culture here.
Okay.
It really just set the tone for me personally and also within, my career professionally.
Oh, interesting. And then you were mentioning earlier, you kind of started I didn't realize this. I know you're in banking now
Yes.
and had a big career in media, which we'll talk about, but you started in banking, right? Was that one of your first jobs you had?
I was actually during college,
Okay.
I had a part-time job.
Okay.
And I worked for one of the banks by the campus, and which was a great experience because I was started as a teller, got to learn the business there, went to a merchant teller, and then eventually they put me on the front desk to open up new accounts.
Wow.
And so that was an exposure early days of banking to me, and then that was part of an acquisition that happened there as well.
Sure.
So kept moving with that, and it was again, just eye-opening for me to see, really what you and I were, what we were all talking about earlier, in the sense of, the personal touch and what that really means, especially when it comes to finances.
Sure.
So that kind of stayed there with me for a long time as well.
But then you moved on to your career, I guess, was really media. So why don't you tell our audience what you're, because it's what it was. You don't look that old, so
Howard
but
Stern came into the bank one day and said, "Come, kid."
But it's been a while. So you were in media for quite a long time.
I was 30 plus years.
Okay, so you
which,
still don't look old enough to do that. But, okay. Well, we believe you though.
Well, I appreciate that, and I left my my license in the car, so
Okay,
I won't be
all
able
right,
to prove it right
card
now.
you,
But
yeah.
I will say this, those were early opportunities to really understand the power of networking and exposure, right? It's not something that I had planned on, right, in terms of going into media ad sales, which was ended up being a phenomenal career for me, which I'm many great friends, clients, and just experiences, and again, influenced a lot of what has brought me here today now with the work that I do at BMO. But I can tell you that, I had an internship during college, my senior year, and I worked for a local radio station, Power 106, as an intern, and that exposed me to the business because most people don't get access to that, especially at a young age.
Yeah.
And it was met some folks there that took interest in me, and again, I lean in heavily on mentorship because it's critical. That's how we help each other across. Right. And, one day they said, you should consider going into advertising sales. And I said, okay, that sounds great. They're like, you're not going to make any money for the first 3 years. So I kind of shelved that idea for a while.
Sure.
But, as I was ready to graduate, I was looking for opportunities. I ended up applying for a role, which we talked a little bit about with Paul and yourself, at a classic rock station called KLSX. And they happened to carry the Howard Stern show. They were part of the actual corporate entity.
Sure.
And so I had that experience, had the experience of meeting Howard Stern. For those folks that know who he was, we talked about it.
So what year was this?
That would have been 1993.
Okay.
And, so that was a lot of fun, right? Incredible fun. At the same time, there was another station called KRLA. It was an oldie station. I don't know if you're familiar with it.
Yeah, I remember.
The interesting thing about that station is that over 65% of the audience was Latino based. English dominance.
I didn't know that.
Lowrider culture.
Really?
Huggy Boy,
That's
Art
huge.
LeBeau. Yeah, and it was.
Okay.
So again, for me, I started seeing the connections.
Yeah.
And I met somebody that I worked with. Her husband happened to be in management at the big Spanish language station in town. And I had known him socially, but I'd never, we never talked business. And she said to me, hey, listen, you understand the culture, you understand the language, you understand the people, and you certainly understand, now the last couple of years that you've gotten this experience here, you should try to translate that into a career move. So I ended up working for one of the biggest Spanish language stations at the time, KLAX.
Okay.
And I did that for a couple of years. And that's where I had the opportunity. I mean, those formative years, I worked with companies in Los Angeles. I'll mention a handful, just the King Tacos of the world, the Vallartas.
Martinez family. Yeah.
Yes, and so I got to work intimately with them, and with Mr. Martinez Sr. specifically. It was incredible. Like the opportunity to sit in his boardroom and have conversations. And I look back on that now. As a kid, you're just kind of running, right?
Yeah.
Like, and you're appreciating the moment, but not like, now you look back on it and you're like, those were special times.
Sure.
And, and again, but just being exposed to incredible entrepreneurs and the drive that people like he and others, so many others have, and have built incredible foundational businesses throughout Southern California. It was just amazing to a kid from, a rural town in Pennsylvania. So,
well, it's interesting. You weren't in banking, but you got to work with a lot of entrepreneurs, which is interesting, and what their businesses were doing and how they were driving business. And so,
exactly.
Which is always, to me, because I was in banking obviously as well, and that was always the fun part, is getting to learn about these businesses and how they got started and what the struggles they had to create the businesses they did and how they affected their family and their community and all that. And so and that's what we do as a chamber, right? We're all about business. We're trying to help our businesses succeed, and we help people grow and we help people get financing and all that kind of stuff through the different programs we have. So it's interesting. But let's talk about BMO. So BMO is where you're at now, and it's come, it's come on the scene in a huge way. You see a lot of advertisements, stuff like that. But what is BMO? What does BMO stand for, and what is, I know it stands for something, but why don't you explain to the audience?
Happily do so.
Okay.
And thank you for the pronunciation.
Okay.
Oftentimes I find myself in those conversations, and by naturally,
Right, sure.
people will say BMO,
BMO,
and
right,
I always, have to, kindly say it's BMO, and you'll, I'm sure you've.
Well, I've seen the
I was gonna
commercials.
say,
I've seen the
absolutely
ubiquitous commercials. So yeah, absolutely.
That's
It's
absolutely
BMO.
right. And but it does stand for Bank of Montreal.
Right. Okay.
And Bank of Montreal was founded in 1817, so making it the oldest bank in Canada, and today one of the largest. But we've had presence here in the United States since the 1980s.
Okay.
So our corporate headquarters as BMO Bank of North America is in Chicago.
Okay.
And currently we operate nearly 1,000 financial centers across 22 U.S. states.
Okay.
And big footprints across California, Illinois, Wisconsin, Colorado, and Arizona.
How many financial centers in California?
220
Okay.
right now. And what's, and again, that's a reflection of our commitment to the long-term investment in this market. And as I'm sure we were going to talk a little bit about this, but I'll jump the gun on a little
Sure.
bit. As part of that, we've also completed an acquisition in 2023 of Bank of the West.
Right.
And that
Right.
really gave us additional, significant 500 branches across the U.S., which about 1.8 million customers.
Okay.
So that really increased our presence across California and the broader West. And just recently, last month, we just made an announcement that we are going to expand 130 plus new financial centers across California.
And so those are de novo, brand new branches. Okay.
Yes, and those
Okay.
will be, the majority of those will be in Southern California.
Oh, okay.
So you can see that
Sure.
presence will continue to grow for us. We're here to stay. We want to be part of the community. We want to be entrenched. And, these really have evolved. The branches, the retail branches have evolved
Sure.
today, right, for different needs. We were talking a little bit about
Yeah.
the transactional nature for many,
Sure.
and obviously that personal touch. We're leaning in on that, and a lot of that is really advice-led type of centers. And really, if you look at them, they're community hubs is what
Yeah.
we're looking to build out.
How many centers do you have in Orange County?
I don't know that exact number off the top of my
Okay.
head, to be honest
So
with you.
220 statewide. Is that right?
Correct.
Is that correct?
That's right,
Okay.
for the state.
All right.
Exactly.
Well, good. Well, that sounds like a lot of growth. You said 130 new.
130 new
ones.
branches.
Okay.
Exactly.
Well, that's quite a big commitment for that. So interesting. And we're all about trying to get financing. So the more people out there helping our clients get financing is important to us as a chamber as well. Why is the Latino community important to BMO?
I mean, if you think about, I'll hone in specifically to Orange County. I mean, it is a 1/3 of the county's population is Latino.
Mm-hmm.
And I think your own statistics also talk about the 30,000 Latino-owned companies
Yep.
across Orange County. And it's certainly one of the fastest growth segments of the local economy, right? And many of these companies are, they're early, mid-stage growth companies, but they're also family-owned, founder-led type of companies.
That's
So
right.
that for us is very important because we want to be part of that growth as they continue to scale.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, the opportunity here and all over the state obviously is immense. To see how the Latino community's matured as far as what you see the growth. I mean, today K through 12 in Orange County, even though we're only 1/3 of the entire county, K through 12 is 50% of the county.
Yeah.
So the growth path is huge, and it's a very entrepreneurial community, as we know, as a chamber who deals with it every single day. So it's important to have financial institutions that are committed to that, right? And not just committed to it transactionally, but committed to it on a relationship basis, right? They want to come in, they want to be here, they're invested, and they're not going to go anywhere. They're going to stay invested and keep investing in it. What have you found personally from going from media to banking to be, was it anything eye-opening to you that struck you?
I'll say that, one of my experiences that I'll never forget when I was with Univision was being part of a team that created a small business initiative called Posible.
Yeah.
And it started in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
And
We've been part of that.
I was going to say,
yeah.
Orange County Hispanic Chamber of Commerce was a fantastic partner.
Yeah.
And again, you sit in a space and your team that is pivotal. It's like you said, it's in the center that connects us all, a convener, right, to the resources. That program scaled nationally to 7 to 8 markets. And it gave me an opportunity to really get to know the businesses outside of the media conversation, right? I had those early and ongoing conversations, but this was about their needs. What were their challenges? It also exposed me to the ecosystem with the great partners like OHCC, right? And others that were really advocating on behalf. And I also saw the great work that was being done to support them from some of the financial institutions.
Sure.
It's like we should be playing nice in the sandbox when it comes to that type of support. And, to me, that was a lasting impression. So when my role ended at Univision, it gave me an opportunity to really reset and think about what I wanted to do. Because I had an opportunity to go back into media right away. I had the luxury of having some time and to think about it. And I had this opportunity presented to me by a friend, ironically, who was at BMO, who I met when she was at a different bank through the work that I was doing through Univision for Posible. And I was introduced to a gentleman by the name of Eduardo Tabon. At the time, he led the Latino segment for BMO, and he was one of the co-founders for our flagship program today, that is the Latino Leaders Index 500. And we met, and quite frankly, we're like, okay, on paper, how does this match up?
Right. Yeah.
He's looking for a banker. I'm not sure that I'm looking necessarily, going into financial sector and joining a bank. Nothing, it wasn't in my, sphere at the time. But once we started talking about the mission that was there, that was happening with BMO, everything, the growth opportunity as well, to be able to impact many of these small businesses with the resources. For me, it wasn't a pivot. It was just a continuation of what I was already doing.
Yeah.
And it just felt natural. I was very grateful for the opportunity, because not often do you still continue, do you have an opportunity to continue that mission, driven aspect of what you're doing in your career sometimes.
Yeah.
And that's what brought me to BMO, and of course the culture inside the bank, the growth opportunity that I've talked about. Because when you look at BMO as a brand, it's younger stages.
Yeah.
Although we're already the 8th largest, bank in North America, all those other statistics that we talked about, but the reality is that it allowed me to move from, yes, an advocate, an advisor in a certain space of media, to now having the full banking, or banking power and prowess and expertise of BMO and my partners.
Yeah, no, that's right. We forgot to ask you. I mentioned your title. Can you explain your title to us?
Yes. So I always, so again, the title is Economic Equity Advisor.
Okay.
And one thing I always want to be clear about the role, specifically for those business owners that are listening, is that, as I mentioned, I'm not a financial person. I guide and connect. I don't sell products. I help business owners really navigate those complexities as an advisor, and thus the title, right? And a lot of that is really understanding what those needs are, where their business is today, and where they want to go, and then helping them connect with the right people and the resources at BMO and beyond. quite
Yeah.
frankly. Some of those conversations go beyond just
Sure.
what we can offer. They're not necessarily financial conversations sometimes. So for that is, really helping those business owners that are how do we translate their goals into the right conversations? So to me, it's, getting them surrounded by the right support system. So that's a really big part of what I do. So I'm a connector. I enjoy going out and meeting new people, especially, business owners, hearing their stories, their origin stories
Sure.
are always very inspirational.
Yeah.
But it's about how do we get them to scale? And how do we partner with, the Orange County Hispanic Chamber of Commerce and other incredible organizations such as yourself that are doing that work on a daily basis? How can we all do that in the spirit of advancing their business?
That's right. And you mentioned something just before this, that almost like you're just getting started, which is interesting from a bank that was started originally in 1817. Is that right?
That's right.
And we kind of say the same thing with the chamber. We're celebrating our 40th anniversary, but what I tell people is that we're a 40-year-old startup because of our best days are still ahead of us. The growth path, we're not, our demographic, or like the average, not me included, but is 28 years old. That's the average age of Latinos in the country. So the growth path is just phenomenal, right? You look at it, whether it's at the universities, when we're at a university, and we're very blessed to be here at a university, and education is one of our focuses, economic development is one of our focuses, and advocacy is one of our focuses. And so those things are all, to us, we're just, after 40 years, just getting started. And it sounds like with BMO and what you're doing is that, look, we can always do things better. There's always growth opportunities for both your organization, but also for the community as well.
No, and I think you're hitting it on the head. I mean, we have an incredible base of, partners that are within BMO today that have been part of, Bank of the West. Incredible partners, new infusion of new partners that are coming
Right.
in. And with all of that is really one of the, I think, in my mind, that creates significant value for the community and the business community is the fact that we're leveraging coverage that builds trust. And it's from a standpoint of local coverage, but with the national bank support that's
Right.
there. So, and again, for us, it's, we also have industry expertise in many sectors that we also bring to the table. And our approach is not just necessarily a one-on-one. It's a one team for a one client approach where we'll bring in, as you think about it, if you're an owner, like you don't operate in silos.
Right.
It's your business, it's your legacy, it's your family, and we take the same approach. You may have one key point of contact, but we bring in the whole power.
You bring in a
universe.
team, right? Because not everybody is, formidable in accounting, in finances, in banking, in operations, just like any business has, right?
That's exactly right.
Yeah, interesting. Anything you've learned along the way was eye-opening coming into banking that really struck you that you go, wow, I really kind of made the right decision going from media to here?
Well, I will say again, if you think about like the purpose of BMO specifically, it's boldly grow the good in business and life. And to me, that just resonated. And
Yeah.
tying that back to like my mission and being able to advocate support for these businesses in the community. You don't know until you go in to an organization.
Right.
You know
what the culture is. You don't know exactly
Exactly.
until you get there.
And
right?
it was so embracing.
Yeah.
I didn't feel like I skipped a beat, quite frankly.
Yeah.
From that standpoint, it was very welcoming, and again, it's the people that are there and the leadership that's there, and what we all are collectively rowing in the same direction at the same time, and I think that's so powerful. Because it's fulfilling from that standpoint as an organization, and we, of course, we make impact
Yeah.
for the enterprise side of it. That's why we're there. That's our job. But we're also doing good in the community from that standpoint.
Well, yeah, you have a board member from BMO that sits on our board, David Bentoncourt, and he's a great young he's a young leader. He's still
Incredible leader.
incredible
Absolutely.
leader and still very young.
Yes,
which
agreed.
is amazing. So so. Tell us about why is that important to invest in leadership per se, not just in your bank customers, but in leadership.
I think, well, leaders set the tone, right? And it's all, what direction are we going to go? But I think it's also, in my mind, it's people that are going to live what they're preaching, right?
Right.
And it's, if we are committed to really helping these businesses, it's being out in the community. And one thing I can say about BMO, you can see us out in the community.
Yeah.
And I think that to me is leadership. And it's not those that are designated the title. It is everybody in the organization, whether you are the head of a line of business or not, we're all involved. And that's a big part of the culture that we have. And I think that permeates and speaks to the leaders that are there today and those that have, were there before that are with us today, and those that are new to coming into the organization. And I appreciate the fact that, there is a process. It took me a process to be accepted into the
Sure.
organization. And I appreciate that
Yeah.
because it tells me that we are, there is an expectation of, the type of individuals that we are recruiting, and we continue to grow. And they're all leaders in their own ways, I should say.
Sure.
Yeah.
And that's a philosophy that, the late great Colin Powell used to talk about leadership at all levels, right? So, I mean, whether you're a private, whether you're a sergeant, whether you're a colonel, whether you're a general, if you don't show leadership at all levels for that organization will fail or implode in itself. And
That's
you
right.
have to invest in that. And, and we try to do that as our organization does, and we hope the businesses we work with do the same, because it does make a difference. If you go into even a retail entity, right, and there's a receptionist or whatever it may be, that's the first line you get for that. That's the first customer interaction, right? And if it's negative, you're hurting your business. You're hurting your organization. So those things are important. So it's good to see when people invest in leadership. And I know you guys have invested in our leaders. We have a leadership component to us, education. We have our youth chamber, and BMO's been involved in supporting that youth chamber, and we've had it for 17 years. And when we first started it, it was to help students just basically interact with some of our people. Like when I was going to the other school, I didn't get to meet with people like you or community leaders or political leaders at 18, 19 years old. It just wasn't available. We're allowing our students to do that and sit on a board and learn skills at a much earlier age, which is great. So we appreciate BMO's investment in that program. And what we have found 17 years later is those students now are leading, whether they're David or Fidel or others, they're now moved up in the ranks at their organizations. They are leading themselves. And so we didn't go into that with the intent of creating a bench, but we've created a bench, a strong bench. And so we do appreciate that
Thank
investment.
you. Absolutely. And I would add internally, I'm very proud of the fact that the organization, BMO,
Yeah.
the firm, we have mentorship programs
Yeah.
formalized, but then it is advocated that, hey, do a coffee break. And that's also part of our culture, because those conversations are important when, you do take the time to speak to those that are earlier in their career, trying to figure it out. I mean, that's an investment, for the company, because they're allowing us that, that space. And, we talk about David Betancourt and Fidel.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
incredible leaders.
Right.
I'm so impressed. And, I had the opportunity to meet David when he was at another bank. He worked at CVS Aetna
Yeah.
for some time. We partnered there, actually.
Yeah.
He was a client of mine.
Okay.
And when I first came over to BMO, he reached out. He goes, hey, there's an opportunity there, and what are your thoughts? And I shared exactly what I've shared today in terms of the culture. And I said, you're the type of leader that we need here as well.
Yeah.
And we continue to build on that.
Yeah. I mean, it's great to see organizations invest in that, and because it's just it's challenging. I mean, you can hire people and that's fine, but when you're investing in your employees to be leaders, not just within the organization but outside the organization in the community, it makes a difference to all of us. I can't believe we're already kind of running up against our time.
Wow, that was quick.
It goes by it goes by fast.
Incredible.
But
I have just one question. You mentioned, Ruben, the other school. Is there another school other than USC in town? I don't remember.
yeah, it's called UCLA.
Oh, yeah.
Well, we're at a UC school right now.
Yeah, that's why I thought you were
You
going to say UC Irvine.
Yeah,
Right.
UC Irvine and UC system. But USC, I have a lot of good friends. My next door neighbor is from USC
Likewise.
as well. I have a lot of good friends that went to USC.
I thought you were
we
going
have-
to say Michigan. That's the other school.
Well, you guys, you did win the men's national
There you go.
championship, and we won the women's national championship. Well, so
what did
it's a good-
USC win this year? I'm trying to remember.
they got quite a few national championships over the years,
Yes,
so
they
they're
do.
they're right up there with.
I don't think we have enough time to cover that. But I did want to share one thing.
Sure,
that
absolutely.
I'm very proud of.
Yeah.
A flagship initiative that BMO
Okay.
has had in place now for 4 years. And I'd mentioned Eduardo Tobon
Yeah.
as being one of the
Right.
co-founders. He partnered with Jorge Rice, who is a publisher of the Latino Leaders magazine, to establish the Latino Leaders Index 500.
Okay.
And, it's not just about the list, right? And this highlights and spotlights the 500 largest Latino-owned companies in the U.S., but it's about creating that community around them,
Right.
And connecting them and, allowing, visibility to, the national rankings, of course, but also other boardrooms, boardroom opportunities, capital conversations that are around that. And I will say that we are about a week away, and I think I mentioned this to you.
Yeah,
in
a
celebrating
big event that's coming up
That's
next
right.
week. Yeah.
And it's a very it's a local celebration, and we do this in a series across the U.S. And again, for us, it's important because it wasn't being done.
Right.
And you would see a few of these companies, especially the larger ones. They range from $41 million to Carvana is a $20
which is a
billion
$20 billion company, yeah.
number one
Yeah.
on the list, and all sizes, scales in between.
Mm-hmm.
So very proud of that work, and I think to me that was also one of the things that was kind of the proof in the pudding, right? In
Right.
terms of the commitment of the company. But we are hosting an event in a week or so, and again, for those middle market companies that are listening today, and if they want to be part of that conversation, I welcome them to reach out, and certainly we can talk about potentially an invitation to join us as well.
That'd be great. Yeah. Well, thank you.
So how do they reach you?
Yeah. How do they contact you, Jim?
So I can give my email out because that's also on LinkedIn.
Okay. All right.
Simple enough. It's Jim, Jim, dot Coronado, Coronado, at BMO.com.
Yeah.
I feel like we should play the jingle there.
BMO.
Coronado. You're at one of my favorite hotels, the Del Coronado.
Yeah.
That's
Oh,
right. That's
wow.
right.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Jim, for being on our podcast. We appreciate it, and we appreciate everything you and BMO does for us as the chamber and being partners with us at the chamber. And good luck with your event next week, and we'll certainly see you down the road. So,
Absolutely.
thank
Thank
you.
you, and appreciate the partnership
Yeah.
and the opportunity to
And
be
thank
here.
you, everybody, for listening today. Appreciate it.
Well, there it is. One more reason to tune in to meet our community each and every week, right here on our community radio station, OC Talk Radio, streaming live from our studios here at the University of California, Irvine's Beale Applied Innovation Center.